that you see and hear Guy, that would be great. Just want to make sure that we're good to go.
Stay awake, everybody.
All right. I got the thumbs up from Paul that we're good on YouTube, and I think you're all set. So I'll hand it back to you guys.
All right, and I can see that we're live on Facebook, so I think we're good to go, Guy. Good morning. I'm ready to read the topic and key lesson if you'd like.
Yes, please read the topic and the key lesson twice, John.
I will do so. All right, everyone, here we go. Our title and topic for today is Find the True Center of Yourself and Stop Struggling to Control Life. And here is our first key lesson. The truth is, it's not the moment that's unfolding before your eyes, nor even your experience of it. Rather, it is you, your true self, unfolding in the ceaseless revelation of a timeless life, inseparable from the divine life that serves to reveal it. And I'll read it again. The truth is, it's not the moment that's unfolding before your eyes, nor even your experience of it. Rather, it is you, your true self, unfolding in the ceaseless revelation of a timeless life, inseparable from the divine light that serves to reveal it. All right, handing it over to you, Guy.
Thank you, John. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are in the midst of a lot of changes at the foundation, and you will see a lot of different expressions of those changes over the next several months, if not years, and you're welcome to stay close and participate in them. That comment goes to the heart very much of what we're going to look at together over the next hour or so. I know how this sounds, but there are no other words or any other way to say it, but as best you can for the next hour, don't think. Just listen. When you see something that is really beautiful, I'm looking at a beautiful morning here in Merlin, Oregon. Part of the miracle of the beauty is the stillness that you enter into, where you are not apart from, you're not separate from that beauty. You don't take the beauty in to yourself in parts. It is the whole of something and the whole of yourself involved in it that creates beauty. And it is very much the same thing when it comes to the truth that sets a man or a woman free. We must see the whole of something. And as we are presently, we never see the whole of anything. Rather, what we see unfolding before our eyes is what our mind explains to us is taking place. And in that explanation, some validation that it is indeed happening to me and I am the center of the moment, and that somehow I am wobbling, things are off balance, and thus I must now return to this center that was suddenly knocked off balance. We have to see through so much here together, but that's why I say don't think, just listen. I want to show you something beautiful, and it is, if you can see it, as beautiful as it comes, regardless of how poorly I may express it. You don't have to be an Einstein to realize that everything is moving. And not just around us, but within us as well. We are, each and every one of us, a part of a much broader movement, a movement that is expressed in the smallest micro world from atomic parts from electrons to elegant universes, how each and every one of these individual items, creations, has, for all intents and purposes, obviously, the electron has a nucleus, a center. Each solar system has a center, as a rule, a sun or greater planet. But each and every one of these micro and macro worlds, each system itself is centered around some other center. So that there is this unending movement that is essentially perfect balance, because it is forever rebalancing itself, reharmonizing all of the moving parts. And all of them are being balanced and reharmonized, obviously, around some center that is not just the individual creations, but that must be the center of creation itself, that is in each and every one of the creations that it has brought forth. And if we were in our usual world, I would ask you, can you see at least that much? That if that is true, and it is, that means that whatever the center is of the moment, it can't be personal. And for us, everything is personal, which makes everything the center of the moment for our attention, and from which our sense of self is derived. My mother used to say to me, and she was right. Of course, the pot calls the kettle black. It's true with all of us. She would often say to me something like, "You think you're the center of the universe, don't you?" I didn't know what she was saying. Each and every one of us thinks that we are the center of the universe. But the problem is that the universe that we are the center of is a creation of an unconscious nature that makes all of the worlds and the activities in and upon them in its own image, and tries to maintain all of those worlds, all of those places, all of those relationships that it is the center of, so that it never loses that sense of being the center of all things, the most important thing in the world. And if you doubt that at all, which I hope you can see, I hope you can see the truth of it, what happens the minute that any one of the many worlds that whirl around your life, him, her, this, that, money, health, position, power, the smallest change in the orbit of any of those things that has been impacted by something that ran into it, some unwanted moment, smallest thing happens. Oh, now what happens? An immense struggle starts, doesn't it? Got to get everything back where it was. And if I can't get it back where it was, I have to reimagine a new world, a new universe. And who is it that creates the new universe imagined in my own image, other than something that believes it sits at the center of it and must control it at all costs? Can you see this with me? That this is where every struggle that we have with life begins. Whether it's one that's suddenly an onset of some situation, or the remembrance of something from our past that knocks us over every time we revisit it. And when that happens, every last time there is an instantaneous reaction. Truly an instantaneous resistance on the spot to whatever it is that condition seems to have threatened. It's amazing, really, when you think about regrets from the past, things you wish didn't happen. That pain doesn't exist until the mind brings it up again and then tries to control the reaction it has to its own repeated memory, its own revelation of something that happened to it that doesn't exist anymore. And we know, all of us, we've heard the expression, center yourself. That's what meditation, in its presently surreptitious meaning, center yourself. grab everything, whatever it is that's not supposed to be there, and bring it into something that you keep in its place while you meditate. But that centering, that real meditation cannot possibly mean to suppress thought. It can't possibly mean to deny a reaction or to in some way resist the condition that we blame for the reaction. To be in the center of something means that if you're following, somehow I have to recognize that everything that pulls on me the way it does, everything that pushes me left to right, everything that tries to drag me down, that all of those sudden feelings that I have are because there is a surreptitious center, a false center to myself. And that false center is myself that clings to and is identified with any particular circumstance, relationship, or condition, so that anything that challenges the condition I'm identified with challenges the center of myself, which believes it must maintain control over all of the universe made in its image. If we understand that to some extent, and I can't ask you in this present format, then it begs a question. I'll touch one more time on this. How many times have you thought to yourself, you got it settled? It's done. Everything's great. Health, finances, relationships, whatever it might be. And no more do you sit back relaxed there in the center of your universe. Then something seemingly from outside of your universe slams into it. An extinction event, creating an existential sense of self that suddenly doesn't know who and what it is anymore because something is knocked out of kilter, its tenuous balance. And if you see that as true, at some point you have to realize, is there a real center? A real center that isn't separate from everything that's taking place, whether it's wanted or not? A real center, as seemingly, carefully I say, represented by our religious beliefs, where unfortunately we are centered on an icon, an image of some divinity, failing to see that image, that icon, can't possibly be the center, the true center of creation, responsible for all of that movement, its balance, and its rebirth. Because if that icon, if that belief, that opinion were the center, then how can that center be so easily turned into someone who hates anyone or anything that challenges its idea of what God is, of what life is about? And that's what happens every time. What do you think every war on this planet is about? It's about each nation, each culture, each civilization created over time, established like some strange dark pearl around a small seed of misunderstanding, until that identification becomes so entrenched that anything that threatens it threatens the individuals in that culture, in that religion. And that's what we have to see. That's the antithesis of a center. This judgment of others, this violence. Now, how do I bring this into our everyday life? Wide awake. Question for you. When you suddenly feel negative, or maybe it's just a long-standing negativity, you feel trapped somehow, what are the directions available to you in that moment? Not just what are the directions in terms of where am I going to go and what am I going to do, but what is the source of the direction I am taking that direction from in that moment? And the answer is it's all very much connected virtually instantaneously, though we don't see it as such. Everything about the direction I'm being given, the direction I want to go in, has been planted, cast into this mind by something that's telling me that in order to regain the end of, in order to regain the what is real and good that I want and that I'm identified, in order to regain it, I'm going to have to restore the universe to the position, the place it's meant to be in. That's essentially the thought. And in order to do that, the direction is, without question, somehow or other, I must imagine a new center, meaning I must imagine a new plan. I must come up with a different set of conditions, a new scenario. And as the mind imagines the new conditions, the new plan, the moment of peace that awaits just beyond this moment, or in quotes, when you die, all nonsense. The moment the mind imagines that plan, that place, that time, it separates itself from what it imagines. That self is suddenly outside of the conditions it believes will restore its contentment. So instead of creating a center that is part of the whole of that movement of life with its natural peace and its prosperity, instead, that center that we have now reimagined with an equally reimagined sense of self derived from it, now that becomes the next set of conditions that will be, as we have seen, will be challenged again. And we go through this life of ours believing that the purpose of it is to meet these challenges that never stop coming. Because the unseen assumption behind that constant struggle is that if I don't meet the challenges that keep coming, I'm going to be overwhelmed and disappear. I'm going to die because everything that my life is centered around has come undone, and I don't know who I am without those conditions that I'm attached to and dependent upon. Now, if you can see this, it begs a question. Whatever it is that I imagine and then derive an identity from that recenters me in that moment. Have you ever seen it? Have you ever thought about it? When someone upsets you, you think about what they are, what they've done, and all the rest of the justification. You do so that you can recenter yourself and regain control over a reaction you had to that person. When all you're really doing is just giving yourself yet another identity that will react again, as you've seen, if not to that person, then to a similar situation. The question that is begged when we see this: what is the true center of this moment? This very moment that I'm in with you. Can you see your thought goes, I don't like that. Where's the center of this moment when I don't like something? Or maybe I think this is great. Where's the true center? Is it not one way or the other in some form of identification, so that everything that I like centered around me, everything I don't like centered around me? And then I can't understand why, when suddenly the wind changes, there's a shift. The next thing I know is that I don't want what's going on around me, or I want less of it. What is the true center of the moment? Think with me. Is it the object of my attention in that moment? For instance, I look out at the ground squirrels on our property. Like them or not, ground squirrels, when they are out of balance, endanger the habitat, literally. Now, I look at a ground squirrel, I look at a turkey, I watch one of the deer run across the property. I look at the madrones in the early morning light. Is the object of my attention the deer, the squirrel, the tree? Is that the center of the moment? Or conversely, the me that feels this way about ground squirrels, turkeys, or deers, or that revels in that light, that sense of myself, is that the center of the moment? And if we look at this clearly, we can see that whatever it is that I am attending to, that if I am not present to not just what I'm attending to, but the nature that is attending to it, then the center of my life in that moment is the object I'm identified with and thinking about, or the center of that moment is the me that wants or doesn't want what that nature is attending to. I don't want this to be complicated. I'd rather walk on glass than make something as beautiful as what I'm trying to describe complicated. I'm just trying to point out that the real center can't be out there by itself in what he said they did, in the way the world is turning. The real center can't be out there, and the real center can't be in just this sense of self that is created as it analyzes and thinks about the world that it sees. Neither one of them by themselves can be the center of real life. Now, we're going to prove that to ourselves. Bring up the second key lesson, if you will, please. Read along with me. We're looking at something quite deep, something quite important. Second key lesson, please. We're all in different parts of the country right now, so it's a little bit broken up. I think I'll just have to read it because we keep getting the first key lesson. You can there it is. Please, everyone, what happens to your attention when things don't go smoothly? What's the center of your life when things seem to be out of control? Isn't the center based on resistance? Wishing it weren't that way, wondering why it happens? Isn't that true? We can use everything that happens to prove the lesson to us. Here's the second key lesson. Awareness, unlike experience, has no fixed point. It holds all points, all appearances, without clinging to any. And yet, because we identify with a single aspect of what we perceive, a fear, a thought, a feeling, we mistake that fragment for the whole. We mistake the part for the whole. Why? Because that part that we mistake for the whole is the whole sense of ourself identified with whatever it is. And now I know who I am and what this moment is about and what must take place. We can take the second key lesson down, please. I want you to think about something with me. Now, I use the word think. I'm asking you to see it. If you have to think, you got to think. Why do I have to have a spiritual teaching, a so-called teacher? For that matter, why do I need a so-called sacred book to tell me that I need to take my attention off of my suffering or a painful feeling? Why do I need an instruction not to give my attention to something that, as I ponder it, is pounding me? Why isn't that evident? If I walked outside in a storm and I was being slammed by hail, I don't have to have some head of an institution tell me, guy, the pain you're in is because you're in a storm. My natural instincts, my intuition, natural awareness, hey, get out of the storm. Get out of the storm, you're out of the suffering. You and I don't have that natural instinct. Instead, when we're suffering, our instinct is to think about what causes that suffering, then imagine a new way to escape it, failing to see that our resistance to that suffering ensures that we remain identified with it. And the more we identify with that fragment, and that's all it is, the mind burps up one bitter moment, starts to relive that memory, the content of it. And the minute that reaction starts to unfold, unfolds with it this identity that doesn't want to experience the content of itself in that moment. And we can't see it. Because when there's this regret, this worry, this doubt, it makes that fragment, that moment, that reaction, it makes that one moment feel like the entire reality of my existence. And where does that leave us? Somehow or other, between that which we desire and imagine will bring an end to the pain and that which we despise as being the cause of that pain. So without our understanding it, we are centered in a moment where heaven and hell, all psychologically produced through our conditioning, through our belief system, exist at once. And we're drawn to the heaven. And when the heaven turns to hell, we go to this hell and then we imagine a new heaven. And we vacillate back and forth, trying in vain to find peace. Trying in vain to be a part of something that is whole, that is holy, that is innocent, that is decent. So that the one who resists the pain in that moment then tries to resolve it. And the attempt to resolve it is always through first telling ourselves what caused it. And then as that mind explains to itself the cause of its suffering, then it comes up with a way to escape the cause. When the cause it's suffering from doesn't exist without the content of that nature experiencing that moment as something it doesn't want. Can you see it? So that we are bound without knowing it. And these were words that came while I was working on this talk. We are bound without knowing it in the womb of all that wounds us. In the womb of all that wounds us. And as long as we remain in that place of, that birthplace of bitterness and fear and enmity, nothing can change. All that will change is what is newly created, made in our own image, and then the fact that we will then have to fight to keep control of that. Let's make a transition. Surely you've heard this idea. I've mentioned it a couple times. We're going to look more deeply at it. If a tree falls in the woods, no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's a very famous koan by the Buddha. Tree falls in the wood, no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Now the mind goes back and forth, failing to see that the very agitation produced by trying to think through an answer to it is the answer to the koan. Because one minute it says, yes, it makes a sound, then it reasons, well, no, but maybe it doesn't. But then if it doesn't, what if this and what if that? Like sound and the ear that hears it, these opposites are mutually dependent. There can't be a sound without an ear. There can't be an ear without the instrument that produces that vibration through the brain, that movement. Where is the center of a sound? These opposites are mutually dependent. They cannot exist apart from each other. I'll say it to you this differently. No opposite has a life of its own. No opposite has a life of its own. Day implies night. Up implies down. And self implies other. Day implies night. No night without day, no day without night. No sound without ear. No up without down. No self without other. Without something that isn't self, that self knows itself through, and that believes it must control if it's going to remain in control of its experience. So when we identify with any idea, belief, any imagined a sense of self. In the moment of that identification, in that same moment that we come up with that new plan, we create, without knowing it, the tension of an opposite that appears with it. Here's my plan. I'm going to get you to be who I want you to be. And I hold some authority over you. You want my money. You want my authority. You want my approval. The minute I hatch on the next plan to do that, the very instant that I create that this mind creates the plan, it immediately creates the fear that plan will not come to pass as it has been made. Or even more obvious, the plan that I've made is challenged by something that you do, and now I have to reimagine the plan, and it doesn't matter how many plans I imagine, because each plan comes with the pain attending it, the pain that something will threaten, challenge, or otherwise upset the apple cart. And since everything is moving, if you can see this, here I am, I'm trying to find a way to be at peace. I imagine a plan, but the plan I imagine doesn't allow for any parts that are moving other than the ones I've imagined. And then I wonder why I'm an anxious, tense mess. Which means that our suffering, our fears, are not created by the world we blame as being out of control. Rather, this suffering is because every time we imagine some new moment that will restore us and create a new center, the very imagining of a center creates a tension with everything that challenges that center. That's called tension. That's called eventual frustration and eruption. So that each and every one of these new plans another example. I lost my temper yesterday. I said something cruel to my husband. I was with somebody and I said the stupidest thing. I couldn't believe it came out of my mouth. If I could have swallowed it, I would have. What happens in those moments? Is there not an instantaneous judgment? And following the judgment, is there not some strong sense that I have to somehow fix this? I have to explain, I have to justify. This event can't go on the way it is because this reaction is too painful, so I'm going to control the event by rearranging the conditions so that now the universe is back in place. And if we can see that this is true, then everything that I'm struggling to restore, everything I'm trying to do to find this kingdom of heaven within, that every last attempt to search it out outside of myself creates the very painful, unwanted moment that I'm in. And if I can see it to any extent at all it's true, then what has to be changed then is not the event. What has to be changed aren't my thoughts about what happened that shouldn't have, or my fear about what may take place. What needs to be changed isn't even the reaction that I'm having that triggered in it. What has to be changed is where we place our attention in that moment versus where our attention is placed for us. Transition. Can you see it? Here's an event. My attention is placed on the condition. And as I dwell on the condition, the conflict I feel, now my attention is on the sense of myself that I can't stand. And the more I explain to myself the sense of myself I can't stand, the more I have to imagine a condition where I'll be able to stand and be upright again because everything will be back in balance. Can you see this? If I ever want to change in any meaningful sense at all, I'm going to have to change not the condition and not the consciousness itself, because I can't change the consciousness itself any more than I can change the condition. What I have to change is where my attention goes. So that instead of being someone who is centered on this new plan, identified with this new project, being pushed around by this desire or despising this moment, and that becomes, that negative resistance becomes the center of my existence. Something else has to take place. I need to find the real center of the moment. And it doesn't even occur to me that I don't know the center of the moment, because I am, in my own mind all the time, the center of all that is important. So if we see, this is the difficulty of the real work, if we see that our hope in things seen, as St. Paul said, if we see that our hope in things seen, meaning imagined, are actually hopeless, what am I left with? Where is my attention to go? I can't tell myself, but I can see for myself that when my attention goes to something that, as it is gravitating there, grabs me and creates yet another sense of self that's going to suffer when conditions change, then I have to ask a question that maybe it'll never come to you this way. God only knows how God presents to the mind as it awakens what it is meant to contemplate, what it is given to do with its own conflict. What's there before this nature that only knows itself in the opposites? What's there before no? Because you and I both understand there can't be no without something that came into the moment saying this is how it should be. And you can't separate this resistance, this no to life, from something that you were already identified with that said this is how life has to go, if I'm going to remain in control of the center of all things, if I'm going to be this center of all things at peace. What's before that nature that says no? It can't be yes, because whatever I say yes to after I don't want something will become inevitably the next thing I'll say no to. Haven't you seen that? I say no to this person, but I say yes to this person. And then it isn't terribly long before I'm saying no to this person and imagining a new person to say yes to. What's before that nature, this divided mind? What's before what it calls its awareness, that isn't awareness at all, but a strange state of identifying with some reaction or desire? What's before the sense of self that reacts to the moment it doesn't want? What's before it? I go before you to make the crooked places straight. You've heard, what is it that is before this unconscious reaction? And the answer is, don't get frustrated. Then you have a new center, don't you? The answer is, what's before this divided nature? The awareness of it. That's what's before this constantly fragmented, always frustrated, always figuring out how to the next plan to be free. What's before that? The light of awareness itself. Bring up the third key lesson, please, Paul. Wide awake. Read along with me. Awareness has no center. It has no opposite, no edge to fall off of. It holds no position to be offended, let alone defended. It is not bound by time nor preference. It cannot be tempted, nor can it be pulled into identification. It simply is. It is not bound by time nor preference. We don't understand that preference is the time that we suffer. Because preference always compares what is to what should be. And out of what should be comes what needs to be. And what needs to be becomes our preference, and we're caught in this circle of self that we have no awareness of at all. Take it down, Paul, please. I have to trust that everybody is following. This means that the center of the opposites is not a place between them. This means the center of the opposites is not a place between them. It's not a place between yes and no. Because any place that is occupied by the fact that it is occupied is separate from everything else around it. The center of the opposites is this timeless awareness out of which yes and no, up and down, light and darkness. It is that awareness out of which these opposites appear and back into which they disappear again. That's the center of all things, this light. You could call it love if you want. It is the center. And if you and I are ever to understand in any small meaning of the word, how do we realize this center? It demands, if we can see it, that somehow or other I'm going to have to outgrow this suffering that only exists because the center of my universe was threatened by what he said or didn't do. And the only way I'm going to outgrow that kind of suffering is that I'm going to have to stop identifying with everything that takes place that suddenly brings up, that's bad. How do I know that's bad? I know we all have immaculate taste. We're fairly perfect. And yes, I'm being facetious, if not sarcastic. I know it's bad because I'm good. I know what's wrong with you because I know what's right. All the time, this constant idea of, God, I lost face. How can you lose face unless you came into the moment holding one in place? So that we have to see how it is the temptation to identify with one side or another of these opposites, this thought, that feeling, and instead recognize the appearance of them when they come up and stand in the awareness of that field from out of which they appear, out of the awareness that they appear out of. And that standing is not doing something. It is the stillness of seeing the whole of the moment. There's only one way to use the word how. We have to see that regardless what the promise of whatever it is that we're being attempted to identify with, new plan, new place, all that business, we have to see that whatever it is powerless to free us from what it hides. Did you ever think that the temptation to take this side or that side, to hate this, to love that, to want this, to not want that, did you ever think that that temptation itself that creates instantaneous identification, that it is in this moment of identification that is hidden the unconscious nature that gives rise to these opposites and the self that is drawn or that rejects what it is drawn to? I hope you understood that. It promises to free us by hiding from us the nature responsible for this constant struggle and the captivity of it. And we don't know any other way to be yet. That's where true spiritual teachings come in. Not that the teachings take the place of understanding, but that the teachings help us see we don't understand, because they make it evident to us. In this instance, I'm someplace just prior to this talk. Kate and myself and a couple staff members were trying to figure out how we're going to do all this technological wizardry. And I'm a dinosaur, technologically. And so all of that's going on. And it seems in moments like that, if you get anxious, doesn't it seem that the anxiety is because of what's unfolding? the way it's unfolding. It's not meant to unfold this way. I mean, if you could see the lunacy that I know how the moment's supposed to unfold. If in fact everything, all of creation, is in a constant movement, completing itself, dying to itself, giving birth to itself, all from an impossible to imagine center that oversees, from out of which everything comes, I don't like the way the moment's unfolding. And I don't like the way the moment's unfolding because my mind tells me that's what just unfolded. And the truth that sets us free is the understanding that what is unfolding is not the event. It is you. It is I. That's what is unfolding. That's what is being revealed. And it is being revealed in an awareness that does not unfold in time, but rather an awareness that holds all of time, all of the opposites, and everything that will ever be created from them, including their possibilities. And that means, if you're following me, the journey isn't linear. That's how we see it. This goes back to the talks over the weekend, the talks in the Pines. For us, the journey is linear because I'm here, I need to get there. So I imagine there, and between the I and the there that I need to get to, there is created this sense of peace, a center to it. Failing to see that the very thing I've imagined will inevitably, because conditions will change, if not just to correct the mistaken understanding, and the next thing I know, I have to become something else, or I have to make you do something else. And so time is created between what I am and what I need to be, between who you are and the time it's going to take to fix you, between the past full of pain and whatever it's going to take on my part to finally get that resolved. All of that is this creation of time, and that time only exists because a set of opposites is created as separate from each other, and we bounce back and forth without knowing it. You can't love one without despising the other. Two masters, seemingly, not two masters, one unconscious nature. So there's this terrible feeling of marching along on this linear line, envisioning what's just ahead, hoping to get there before it changes, trying to change everyone so that it doesn't change before we get there. And the journey is not linear. It's not a journey of becoming. It is a journey of revelation. The journey is revelatory. What we see and experience as becoming is created by our identification with some conditioned reaction. And the instant that we are identified with that reaction, we are remanded over to the consciousness that has it, and the same consciousness responsible for the unwanted experience then tells us what we have to do in order to experience something that will regain and return us to the center, to peace. And this is the great mystery, what I'm describing to you. What is actually taking place, this journey that is revelatory, the whole of it already exists. If there can't be day without night, if there can't be up without down, if there can't be hot without cold, and that none of these opposites exist by themselves, that means that we live in a constantly newly created consciousness, giving rise to creatures literally created from itself, and where each and every one of these new creatures produces a new order of consciousness if we're in relationship to it in the moment. Again, I'm struggling to try to ask you to see something. What if who I really am is the whole revelation of this moment with all of its parts? And that the whole of that revelation exists in this awareness that has no center. So that the center is in everything at once, as is God, as is Christ in the light. Not apart, but you and I participating in the unfolding of this creation, of ourselves, of our true nature, of that which God gave us and made us in his image. That's the mystery. The true center of all things, of life itself, is not a fixed point. The true center dwells in a completely different order, a completely different dimension of time. Don't get lost here. When you see beauty, time stops. Does it really stop? Or do you just enter into another order of time in which there's no longer a division between you and what you see? Because that's what time is. Time is the distance between the me and what I want to see or what I don't want to see. That's time. That's distance. That's space. And that sense of self is forever trying to close the gap, close the opposites by controlling one or the other. And it can't do it. It never has. The true center of all things is a holy place. The kingdom of heaven is not some place, some time, some space to get to. It already exists within us. And it exists as this awareness of itself. Then we're not trying to reconcile the opposites. I hope you make the transition. What am I doing when I'm struggling with you? I'm trying to reconcile the reaction I've had to you. And the reaction I've had to you proves that you are other than I am. So I must change you if I want to get back to the center of myself where I'm at peace again. So these opposites, up, down, left, right, yes and no, God, haven't you seen it? They're not reconciled by trying to solve them. They're already reconciled, and awareness lets you see that as they arise within you and disappear. Do you know that if you didn't mess or try to mess with someone that you think has made your life messy, I'm speaking spiritually, you would see all of this reaction come up, and you would realize, you know what? I believe I am other than my own reaction. Now, you don't think that to yourself, but your reaction and what you're trying to change proves to you that you are other than this pain. Why else would I try to change what I blame if by not changing it, I'm free of the pain? So I believe, without knowing it, that the pain I'm in somehow exists apart from what I'm blaming for it. And it doesn't, any more than the sound appears without an ear. So as you start to see this, you let all of this unfold within you. And as you do, you see you are not separate from the light that reveals these opposites. You're not apart from the true center of the moment, because in that moment you realize there's no distance between you and the condition you blame for the suffering you're in. There's no distance. Sweet Jesus, you know the apple on the head of a mule as it tries to get to it, stuck on a stick? What do you think that metaphor represents? This endless attempt to close the distance between myself and what disturbs me. Until I see that the disturbance is part and parcel with this unconscious nature and start to rest in the awareness of that nature as it begins to unfold, I'll never see it unfold, and I'll never be free of identifying with one side or another of what it's presenting to me as the problem. I have to get to this exercise. I hope you're following me. Surely you know some tension, if not already present, is going to come up today. There'll be an argument with someone. There'll be an argument with yourself. Some kind of conflict. Should I eat this or not eat that? Some fearful thought. What happened? I hope that doesn't happen again. And you know, you can't hope that something doesn't happen again without fearfully imagining that it will. So that in that moment, instead of what we always do, which is this sort of instantaneous habitual analysis, where we start listening to ourselves, explain to ourselves the pain. And for the explanation of the pain, find ourselves identified again with something we're going to do to save ourselves. Instead, we start to recognize there would be no self to save if it weren't for an unconscious nature creating a set of conditions, identifying with them, and then trying to keep everything in place which it can't do. We must do a new kind of work, which is to become aware of the real center of the moment. And the real center of the moment means that when this sudden onset of this negativity comes, to see that if I'm identified with the negativity, that's just one side of the equation. If I'm identified with blame, that's one side of the moment. And there can't be the side of the moment I don't want without an unseen side of the moment that I came into wanting the opposite. So that the real center isn't trying to change or control my experience or the thing being experienced. The real center of the moment is the awareness of the nature creating the illusion that I am separate from the experience or the thing being experienced. The real center of the moment is this awareness born of understanding that one doesn't exist without the other. And I have to be willing to bring that understanding into the moment with me. Because that awareness is the center. And it's not just the center of what I call my moment. It is the center of all moments that are in confluence, bringing together the conditions that everyone is experiencing in the moment, as everything moves around this beautiful creative center that isn't a place, but rather an awareness out of which the creation appears and never stops appearing. To understand that means that the real task, not because I imagine it and hope to find something out of it, I must become still. I mustn't try to fix you or fix this situation that just seems untenable. And sweet God, I am not telling you what to do or not to do. I am not your teacher. I do not want you to follow or believe what I say is true. I'm simply telling you what I've been given to tell you and show you. And if you can see it, things will change, but not because I say so, but because you'll see that without the change we're describing, you're gone, you're done. You'll see it. That new necessity will create the providence, will bring about this awareness that regardless how tenuous it is, here I am. I'm sitting in my house. I'm looking outside. My mind falls on something that has to get done. Oh God, I don't have time to do it. Where am I going to get it? How's it going to take place? Where is my attention? What is the center of my attention on? It is on not the outside, it's on a thought about the outside. And I fail to see, because of the depth of my identification with it, I fail to see there can't be the thought of what may or may not happen without something in me doing that thinking, and without preparing itself for what it imagines may happen. So the center of the moment is the awareness of seeing these opposites appear at the same time. And when you see them appear at the same time, you are then the awareness, not what you are being given to be aware of or to run from that you don't want. Watch the movement. Don't take a place in it. You watch, you bring yourself to the center of the moment. It's okay, the center of the moment. Well, I know it's not out there. I know it's not that thought. That's just one side. And I know the center of the moment isn't the me having that thought. That's ludicrous. And yet there exists somehow a relationship between what is outside and what is inside. A relationship between what is yang and yin, between active and passive. And I've spent my whole life trying to control or otherwise affect one side or the other, always futilely. Now I understand why it's futile. Because there's no self the way I imagine it that has lost its freedom. Because freedom can never lose. Because awareness can never be made a captive of anything. Awareness silently observes everything come in and come out. And it celebrates the revelation of itself, but not in thought, but in a relationship that grows and deepens with every last moment as it realizes that in this centerless, timeless awareness, there has never been a me apart from it. There has never been a you apart from it. I better stop. I hope that I communicated at least some of this to you. Don't let your mind tell you what you need to do to get back to the center, to center yourself. You already are a part of, inseparable from, what is holy. What is holy does not need to restore anything. What is holy is what everything that is being created comes out of. And you can know yourself that way. Find the center. It's not out there. It's not in here. It is in the awareness of these opposites as they appear in this consciousness. That's where the kingdom of heaven is in this awareness of the whole, not in you trying to make yourself whole by recreating some kingdom in your own image. And honestly, I don't know what happens next, Kate or John. There should be
I'll come on.
There should be John. We should give everybody at least a minute or 2 minutes.
For sure, Guy.
God willing.
I can, as we're kind of taking a breath and taking in what you said, I have a couple of announcements that I can share, just some while people are taking a break, and then we can then move to our discussion.
All right.
So right now, as I said, as Guy invited us to, go ahead and take a short break. While you're doing that, I just want to remind you of a few things that are always worthwhile reminding ourselves of. And that is, first of all, these talks are sponsored by the Life of Learning Foundation, and Guy and this foundation for the last 30 years and more been working to spread these ideas around the world. And since we are a nonprofit organization, we have always depended on the help of others. And so again, we are always willing to invite others to join us in this mission. And if you can help us in any way, financially or otherwise, it's greatly appreciated. You can go to our website at guyfinley.org/donate, and there you can find a number of different ways in which you can do so easily there. And also you can find a number of ways in which you can help us in ways that are other than financially. And again, we greatly appreciate your support. As time passes, our mission changes, at least in terms of the instruments that we use to spread this information. And we are putting a great deal of effort into our online presence, and we appreciate your help in doing so. Related to that, I'd just mention again, online presence. Guy has accounts on just about every single social media forum that you could think of, and we want to encourage you to join us online. For example, on Instagram, we are approaching 75,000 followers on Instagram, which is an amazing growth for us in the last couple of years. We have over 32,000 followers on YouTube, 15,000 on Facebook, and as I said, are on every platform. And those platforms are free, and they are opportunities for you to receive information from Guy and posts and quotations and writings and so forth, and to stay connected to this work. So I'd highly encourage you, if you don't already, do find us. A simple way to find us is to use the web address guyfinley.org/ and then put whatever you're looking for, /Facebook, /YouTube, /Instagram, and we have links that will take you right to Guy's accounts, and you can sign up and follow us online, and we hope that you do so. Finally, I'll just end with this. We do have a weekly newsletter that is also another way to stay connected to this work, and I'd encourage you to sign up for that. It is free, guyfinley.org/newsletter, and that newsletter comes out once a week. It has news from the foundation. It has special writings and articles just in that newsletter. It has inspirational quotes. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you also get access immediately to a free ebook of Guy's, and that ebook is Freedom from the Ties That Bind. So again, encourage you in as many ways as possible. Please stay connected to this work. All right, I think that's given us and our audience a moment or two to get settled again, I think. Again, at this point, if you'd like to join in our discussion, those of you online on GoToWebinar, you can click the hand icon and that'll put you in the queue. And I see one hand in our queue right now. Or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can send in written questions. And we also have written questions that have come in during the week through our website. So we have about a half hour here where we can talk with Guy. Are you ready to go, Guy, or do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, John, we can get going here.
All right, Guy. I see. We'll start with the written question. We'll start with a written question that has come in. This came in during the week through our website, and it comes in from a student in France by the name of Guillaume. And so it's nice to know we have online students abroad. Here is what Guy is what Guillaume asked. He says, I was wondering if you could help me to understand Guy's message for me about guilt, as some parts seem complex. And then he quotes Guy. He said, this is what Guy said: we are not responsible to the past. What has been done is done. However, it is what we do in each present moment that determines what not only becomes of our future, but that heals the past. There are very many mistaken parts of our unconscious nature that cling to the feeling of mistakes we've made, and the pain we feel over these missteps seems to prove that we must make amends by suffering now over what cannot be changed by any suffering we are deceived into doing for the sake of that false sense of self that lives to relive whatever its favorite form of suffering is. Drop it and you drop that nature. That's the work. Do it, persist with your wish to be free. Thank you in advance for any help you can give, Guy.
Hi, Guillaume. There are, as always, so many moving parts, Guillaume, to the question you've asked that I'm not sure where to start. I will say this: if you're listening today, or if you come back and listen to this talk as it's rebroadcast, next Sunday I'm going to talk at great depth about one of the most painful, mistaken ideas that we have about this life, and it is intimately connected to the question you've just asked. And I'll give you a foreshadowing, Guillaume, and everyone else. What is this most painful, mistaken assumption that we have about life, within which, by the way, is found this past that we suffer over, that we feel guilty about? We believe, without knowing it, that this life is a pass-fail test. What is guilt other than I failed the test of that moment with you, with them, with myself? I failed it. And now, because I failed it, and this unconscionable, unconscious nature continues to bring it back up into my mind, I feel this terrible guilt because not necessarily for what I did, but I failed the test of being as perfect as I imagined myself to be. I failed the test of changing that circumstance as I believed I could and should, and then saw that I couldn't. So that's the first thing, Gilliam. The past that you feel guilty about doesn't exist in the way that your guilt gives you to experience it. What you're really experiencing is the relationship between a set of opposites. The mind that remembers what it wished it didn't do, and the self that then relives its regret. Neither exists without the other to the point of this talk. How much wasted time, and I'll be stronger, how much wasted time, not just in revisiting the past, but in taking thought at all about who I am and what this is and what that means and what I have to do. And it's all wasted because all it does is create suffering, born of the illusion that I am other than the moment I'm thinking about, and if I can just get what I'm thinking about straightened out, I'll be on the straight and narrow and finally saved. Isn't it amazing? Tens of thousands of years, and I'm talking about my own life, believing that I can save myself. Save myself by imagining another kingdom of heaven, by imagining another God, another icon, another thing to believe in, failing to see that no matter what the opposite is that the mind brings up in order to give itself a sense of peace, is producing in the very moment of its creation the conflict that exists between what it has imagined and what will challenge that imagined condition and the self identified with it. You see all of that, Gilliam, and the whole thing collapses. With God as my witness, it is possible for a human being to live without guilt at all, without a fear that lives within them forever telling them what they must do to be free. Because you can see the guilt, you can see the fear, you can see all of these negative conditions come up in the consciousness, and you'll have learned so much about that nature, you'll have no more interest in participating in its life, because you have begun through your awareness of that nature, you have entered into another life that isn't troubled at all by what troubles that nature all the time. Let's go on, John.
All right, Guy, we'll go on. I see Elisa has raised her hand in the queue, so let's go to her.
Very well.
Hello, Elisa. Now I've unmuted you. There you go.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Guy. Do you
Hi.
hear me?
My name is Guy.
Okay. My question is the following. I was looking for a job for a few months, and eventually I got an offer. And my first reaction was, oh God, I don't want this job. So now what I'm thinking is that my mind just trying to avoid situations which are uncomfortable?
Yes.
Or is it really my inner calling that just thinks, oh, I just don't want this job. I really want to do something else. So maybe you can give me some question or some thoughts,
Yes.
so that I can understand it.
Yes.
Better.
I would be happy to do so, Elisa. And while it isn't Elisa or Guy or anyone to be congratulated for this gradual awakening of an unconscious nature to the conflict that it breeds, just you being aware of the fact that first I wanted this job, any job. I've been out without work. I need to take care of myself. And then, by the grace of whatever it is that movement of life produces, some act of karma, which means something that requires more balance, more polishing, more finishing. There it is. And now the very mind that was upset because it didn't have a job is upset about the kind of job it got. Is that not that vacillation that I just described? First, my attention is on this job, this world outside of myself that I need to participate in to take care of myself. And then it comes along, and now the self that wanted it doesn't want it. And it doesn't want it. Why? Because that nature, that consciousness, then begins to think of all the reasons why the job that it had to have will bring with it things that we don't want to have. I'm going to have to face new responsibilities. I'm going to go through things I don't want. Maybe it's below my station in life. Maybe it's too much for me to try to deal with. And Alicia, you have to see, you are in the womb of the wounded. That's what the womb of the wound is. This nature that can never come to a stop, because if it ever does, what would it be? It has to have something to be for or against. And no matter what it's for, it will be against. And whatever it's against will produce something it wants to be for. So the solution, Alicia, isn't in taking the job or not taking the job. The solution is in the moment where you become aware of how these opposites don't exist without each other, the torment in the vacillation between them. And then you've been given something real. You've been given a way in which to enter the true center of the moment. And the true center of the moment is to see both of these sides operating at the same time, one giving rise to the other. And in that, you have new self-understanding. And I'll add this, Elisa, then whether you take the job or not doesn't make much difference. The real lesson in the moment has been learned. And the real lesson is not how to make yourself profitable in the world. The real lesson is to see how there is something inside of you that believes it knows what is profitable and that that's the source of your punishment. To see all of that, Alicia, is to begin to change everything, and the way, I might add, the way in which you respond to the job offer. I hope that helps, Alicia. I hope it helps clear things up a little bit. Don't try to come to a conclusion. Awareness has no conclusions. Instead, come to the point where you want to be aware of this nature that is always concluding yes or no, good, bad, want, not want. Then you'll understand why Christ said you can't serve two masters. You'll love one and despise the other, because the two masters is this unconscious nature that is so divided it does not know what it does to itself, let alone to everything else in the world in which it operates. Let's go on, John.
All right, Guy, I'll come on here and share a written comment that just came in from Jordan on YouTube. Jordan says, I'm working with this. You don't need to live in awareness all day. You just need to remember it's there a few times a day and then go back to being Jordan, lifting, leading, loving. The freedom is knowing none of this is who I am, but I still get to enjoy it. And they wanted me to share that comment.
Yes. Hi, Jordan. Look, I'm not going to say yes or no to your comment, but I will add that you can start with that thought if you want. But I think it would be a lot better than looking for a way to put out a fire born out of frustration with some moment you don't want. I think it would be a lot better not to have the fire to start with, or to use every fire that seems to start when there's friction and conflict between ourselves and the world. Use the light of that fire to learn the truth and see the fact of this centerless moment, of this perfect unfolding. Then I don't have to struggle. What you're describing, it's okay, but I would ask you to see, as you attempt to do what you were saying, instead of trying to remember to become aware when you need to be aware, be a lot better to remember to live in that awareness and then do what you're doing from within it. So that in the truth, Jordan, you're acting from the center of this moment. You're acting from what is being shown to you as it unfolds. instead of analyzing what has unfolded and then hoping to find the awareness to deal with it. It'll come, Jordan. At least you're beginning to bring an end of this struggle that you always had with trying to control life. Now you need to see as best you can, as often as you can, that the unattended mind is the breeding ground of self-defeat. Because an unattended mind is for always and ever being given what to attend to by a nature that knows nothing about the true center, the true creator, the true life that we are looking for. On we go, John.
On we go. Patricia has raised her hand in the queue, guys, so I'll go to her next. Hello, Patricia.
Well, hello. You know, I'm sitting here listening to you, Guy, on my stone patio, and I had a perfect example of what we talk about here. And like I said, I'm on my stone patio, and I looked down, and I had a huge reaction because I thought there was a snake at my feet. Of course, I had a huge reaction, but it was only a twig. And when I saw it was a twig, there's nothing to do with it. I mean, your mind couldn't go on and on about a twig. You knew it was a twig. There's nothing else to worry about or to plan about.
Right.
And I just thought that is the simplest thing you could say, and there's no identification with it at all. And yet, that's just what the opposites. When you see one side of the opposite, and it's just connected to another side, it's just flipping back and forth in our psychological life, then you'll pay no attention to it like we have. You won't plan from one side or in the other.
Yes.
So
to paraphrase, there can't be this immediate scream, this tense reaction to what is a twig, unless my mind first saw it as a snake. And the mind that sees it as a snake, the mind that sees is not the mind that reacts. But built into that mind is this conditioned reaction from your childhood or wherever comes that fear of a snake. And instantaneously you're gravitated to this reaction and identifying with it, failing to see that, as you've said, it was just a twig. And when I see that my fear of the future is just a twig I've imagined as a snake, that my doubt about what's going to happen because of what took place 20 years ago is just a twig that's brought to life by a mind that requires giving life to it so that sense of self can attend to it and struggle with it. When all of that is seen at once, the whole thing collapses back into this center, into this awareness that doesn't have an identity, because it is all things at once that it sees and experiences. That's the best I can do with what you said. I'm off.
All right, Guy, I'll come back on, and I have another written question. This one came in this week, again from a student overseas, this one from Eduardo in Mexico. And he says, "Hi, Guy. First and foremost, thank you for all your work that enables us to search and grow together in consciousness. I've been following your work on and off for quite a while now, 10 years, I think. I was born and raised, currently living in Monterrey, Mexico. My question is about death. Many religions state we will see our loved ones in heaven. Others state that we will be reborn and we will have no memory of our past lives, including relationships. My question is, do you think we will see our loved ones? If we are reborn, are we going to remember who our loved ones are? I've been thinking about that for a while, and I'm afraid I will not see or remember my loved ones in the afterlife. Thanks for your time."
First, hello, Eduardo. So I think without much ado, we can see that there is a certain pain, a certain anxiety, a certain urgency, if you would, to your question. And I think we can also see that the urgency to this question has to be predicated in a certain experience that my mind creates when I imagine, as it can only be imagined, what is this kingdom of heaven where I'm going to get to see everybody again? Won't that be great? But wait a minute. The moment I imagine that great kingdom to come, I live in fear that maybe it's not there. Well, what about my loved ones? What's going to happen? Are they going to be reborn? Am I going to be reborn? And now my mind gravitates to this image of the continuity of myself. And I would add that only something that lives in the constant fear of death worries about its continuity. And now my attention is on this idea of the necessity for the continuity of myself. And the most extraordinary thing, Eduardo, and everyone, if you can see it, is that when I'm captured by a thought like that, I'm completely oblivious to the fact that 10 minutes ago I couldn't stand my life. I didn't want to be me. I didn't want this life to continue. Are you kidding? Continue to live with these regrets? Continue to live with this health problem? Continue to live with this conflict that I have with my brothers and sisters that aren't even alive anymore? And so, Eduardo, the task is to see this. And if you see everything I'm describing, Eduardo, in that moment, that self, that identity has to die. Because real awareness, real consciousness will not participate in it punishing itself. And as it dies, Eduardo, do you know life? As it dies, do you know what it means to be reborn? And as you grow in the awareness of what it means to die to yourself and to experience life as it is being given to you, as it is unfolding, now what is unfolding is not your fear of or your hope in, but rather being able to rest within an understanding that who and what you are doesn't worry about what may or may not happen after life or death. It is too busy being alive and experiencing the revelation of itself. A revelation that contains everything I just described. I know that I will spend whatever remaining years I have of this life trying to find a way to communicate this idea that revelation is perfect. There's no revelation that has in it something that isn't wanted. Revelation is life, death, birth, creation, uncreation, beginning and ending, all wrapped up into a single intelligence, a single light from out of which all of that comes. And that's where we're meant to rest. In this living Christ, in this living light, in this living revelation of which is unfolding, and I am part of what is unfolding, and what is unfolding is inseparable from the awareness of it. Then you have peace. Then you're no longer a problem, a pain, a thorn in your own side, trying to pull something out that's sticking in you because you didn't see yourself stick yourself with it in the form of some sticky question that you can't answer with the mind that asks it. I think that's probably enough for now, John, with that.
All right. Frida has sent in this question to you, Guy. She says, this morning I heard the birds singing, and I often look outside and see nature, but I don't feel what is beautiful or that something so beautiful makes you quiet. I feel the same everywhere. No outbursts of feelings like I used to have. So I think that's good. But not feeling anything is something you're not used to. Is this a phase you're going through? Could you explain this to me?
Yes, Frida.
Thank you.
I'm happy to explain it to you, Frida. I couldn't be happier. So, Frida, first, I know it feels like you are Frida. And yes, you have the name Frida. You had parents I had parents. My name is Guy. A personality was developed over the years. And the personality was developed by an unconscious nature. I had no choice in what was developed in my personality. I can say that I did. I can say, well, I could see this in myself, so I'm going to be the one who changes that by doing this. And then I set myself to some ambition. But it wasn't I who chose that ambition. It was the fear of what I didn't want to be or experience in continuity that decides here's how to be discontinuous. Here's how to bring about a new contentment I didn't have before. So then, Frida, what happens, and what I'm leading to is this. It happened just yesterday. I was with a couple of the men. We were out playing some golf. And I was riding in the cart with a student, and I asked him if he noticed something about two men that just drove by, one of which I smiled at, but neither one of them saw me, and they just drove straight ahead, more like some form of unconscious cattle at the wheel of a golf cart, moving from the ball to the ball to the ball. I said, do you know death? Do you know what death is? I asked him, the student. I said, death is what happens when we no longer can take in impressions. Those two men are dead. Christ said, let the dead bury the dead. What was he talking about? He was talking about those who could no longer take in the impressions, not just the happy impressions, the impressions including everything we're describing today. The impression of the fact that my mind, as it is unattended, produces suffering. And when I've had enough suffering as I grow up, as all of us go through, we begin to, without knowing it, shut down, just as those men had shut down. But there was no one choosing to shut down. That consciousness couldn't bear the content itself anymore, and so it just decided to move from thought to thought, from ball to ball, from one swing to the next, momentarily enjoying the outcome or resisting it, but not alive anymore, Frida. So whether you see it or not, what you've described is very valuable, because you had the impression this morning that you're not taking in the impression. That's not a word salad. It means a new awareness is there that somehow or other, something that you sense is intended to be present isn't. And that's the beginning of you wanting to be in presence, you wanting to understand. Most of us are so afraid of being hurt, Frida, that there's no chance of love. Not because love isn't forever giving us a chance, but because something in us is telling us in the moment where it is unfolding, danger, danger. You were hurt here before. You don't hear a voice say you were hurt here before. You don't hear something say, this moment's like that regret from before, so I better do everything I can to avoid this unfolding. And in that moment, this nature turns away from the light, turns away from the impression intended to give it life. Impressions are life, because every impression is the revelation of something we didn't know about our own consciousness the moment before. So impressions are inseparable from revelation, and revelation is life. So your recognition of that, Frida, is the beginning of you understanding, I need to reclaim my attention. I need to understand as best I can that the fear of being hurt or lied to or betrayed, this dullness that comes over me because I drive through the same day doing the same things over and over again, I'm not even living. Something's living my life for me. To see all of that is to become sensitive to an impression that creates a new necessity. And the new necessity isn't just to want to be more present, more aware of these impressions, including the painful ones. But the necessity is to explore and understand the source of that and to enter into it willingly, Frida, willingly. I hope that helps expand something for you. On we go, John.
All right, Guy, I'll come back on. I just have one more written question and no hands in the queue. So here is this written question that perhaps we can finish on. It came in to our website from Travis. And Travis says, it became a necessity to quit fighting with unkind people. Life presented so many people, so many potential battles that I had to surrender in a sense. I don't think a soul can survive with a person who is in perpetual conflict. The measure of peace I have found is the working of providence, is it not?
Yes.
Still, I know it's not perfect peace. Travis gets hung up with what people say. He tries to think of a good retort, though he does not express it. If Travis had perfect peace, he could interact freely with those who are cruel or who condemn him. He could express kindness towards those who choose to be antagonistic. Is that the aim, or is it okay to be silent as I suffer myself?
So I need to divide what you wrote in here, Travis, into two parts because they are connected and they are invaluable, but only as seen together. So first part, Travis says, it's become a necessity to quit fighting with unkind people. And God willing, I add here, Travis, it's become a necessity to stop fighting with myself. Because you're not fighting with unkind people, you're fighting with your own ideas about how they should be. So life has presented so many people, so many potential battles that I literally had to surrender. And my intuition tells me properly, he goes on, I don't think a person can survive. I don't think a soul can survive within a person who is in perpetual conflict, and it can't. So he continues, the measure of peace I have found is the working of providence, is it not? Absolutely. It's a measure of the providence comes out of a new necessity. My old necessity is to straighten out people that bother me, to mess with moments that are messing with me. That's the old necessity. But I somehow had enough of an impression that it was futile to struggle with the opposites. As Ecclesiastes says, all is in vain for those who struggle in the field of opposites. I see the uselessness of it. And as I see the uselessness of this struggle, I have a new necessity, and that is to lay down the struggle. Not because I want to lay down the struggle, but because I see the struggle is useless. That's perfect. And yes, providence is born out of seeing this pain. As I was explaining to Freedom, most of us don't want to know anything about pain. We just want to escape it to an imagined pleasure. But here's Travis, who's had enough of this pain that he's aware of, that he's beginning to realize the real source of it, and that he can no longer interact with that nature. The end of that interaction brings about the providence of a new kind of peace. That's the first part. That's good, Travis. But here's where we get into trouble, Travis. He then goes on to write, if Travis had perfect peace, he could interact freely with those who are cruel or who condemn him. He could express kindness towards those who choose to be antagonistic. Is that the aim, or is it okay to be silent as I suffer myself? So now what Travis is doing, without knowing it, that's why a school like this exists. So I've had a measure of peace I couldn't have imagined because it came about by coming to the end of what I see has always been a self-induced suffering, self-created suffering. I can't continue to do that. So now there's this modicum of peace where to some extent I don't jump in with two knives and one in my teeth and a battle hat and a battle horn. I don't jump into these relationships as quickly as I used to. I want to be a little more attentive to the whole of the moment than I used to be, because now I see that if I'm not attentive, then Travis is going to get into this thing and he's going to cook his own goose. So now that mind that begins, Travis, to understand something of itself takes this peace that it has begun to make an icon out of, that it now has formulated into an ideal. Peace is not an ideal. Peace is not something that you can have. Peace is something that you are. Awareness is peace because nothing appears within it that isn't part of its movement and its rebirth. It's revelation. So Travis must not, in quotes, think about this perfect peace, because now he's made an image out of an experience that was good. But if I make an experience out of something that was good, then the good of that experience now becomes the bad of measuring and comparing everything that doesn't live up to this new peace that I'm supposed to live with, that I now possess. You can't possess peace, Travis. You're not the creator of what is good. Christ himself said, "Why do you call me good? No one's good. It is my Father that doeth the works, not me." You and I have to understand this relationship, Travis. And you've got a good start. That's why I took what you wrote in 2 parts, because the first part's perfect. The second part is Travis getting ready to trip Travis up again. And that I trust Travis would eventually see, but perhaps this momentary intellectual intervention will allow you to a modicum of freedom that you wouldn't have had before, a freedom to see more clearly what it means to enter into the center of that moment instead of trying to center yourself around this ideal or this image. That's it. If there's no more questions.
Yes, that is it. There are questions. We're ready to, so I'll just share a brief reminder.
You're breaking, John, stop, John. You're breaking up. You're breaking. John, let me talk. You are breaking up something terrible. I cannot understand what you're saying. So unless we can put a message in this chat box that clarifies what we can do, then we'll bring an end to our conversation. I'll wait a few. Yeah. Folks, like I said, a few technological issues.
Guy, it's okay. He can't hear you, but we can go ahead and wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And of course, join us again for a classic talk with Guy this coming Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And hopefully you're on our newsletter list and keep updated on all of the events that go on, especially in this next couple of months. You'll want to make sure that you're connected with us so that we can update you on the latest and greatest with events and such. You can get to our newsletter list by just going to guyfinley.org/newsletter. Isn't that easy? And get signed up, and then you'll be in the know and when there's something new that you need to know. I think that's probably it. So Guy, you can go ahead and just click that go live button again, or how to turn that off in Live Stream Studio, and that will end the stream.
All right. One last.
Remember how to do that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
One last thought for everybody. Remember the exercise and work at it. Return to the center. Do it now. There's no problem in the center because the center is connected to everything and is unfolding within you and around you at the same time. Find it, enter into it, and you will find a peace that passes understanding.